Prithvi Shantirantarikshagam Shantir Dyaus Shantir Dishashantiravantara Disha Shantiragnishantir Vayushantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantiv Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantiv Shantireva Shanti Shantirme Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We begin today with the second chapter of this book. The first chapter set the context, if you like. We saw the story of Nachiketa, how when he saw that his father was not observing the rules of that worship properly, then stood up and said, this is not right. But he didn't say it that way. He just said, who are you going to give me? And father, angry and upset, said, I'll give you to death in order to hold the father's words that they may be true. He goes to the abode of Yama, the deity associated with death. And because he has to wait there for 3 nights, Yama offers him 3 boons. We saw that the first boon, Nachiketa asked that when he goes back, his father would recognize him, his anger would calm down, and that boon was granted. The second boon Nachiketa was asked was about the way to go to heaven, something that many people of his times and many people even today are curious about. What is this higher world, the heavenly world, and how do we go there? And Yama grants that boon as well, telling him about the sacrifice, the yajna that needs to be done, and says henceforth that fire which is used in that yajna will be named after Nachiketa. And then the third and final boon, Nachiketa says, people have this doubt that after death, some people say death is the end of everything. And some others say, no, that's not the end. Something survives death. So I want to know this mystery of death. What exactly happens? Does anything remain after death? And then we saw how Yama says, don't ask this question. This is a very tough question. Everybody has doubts about it. Even the citizens in heaven have doubt about it. So ask for anything. And Nachiketa is adamant, and he said, no, I want an answer to that question itself. And then Yama offers him so many temptations, asks him, virtually ask for anything. And Yama says, no. Oh, Nachiketa says, no, this is what I want. And Yama is pleased with that answer. And now, having determined that Nachiketa is the right student for this higher knowledge, Yama now begins his teaching. As we can see, that whenever a student would approach a teacher, it is not mandatory that the teacher has to begin the teaching right away. The teacher would first, in the Vedic period, make sure that the student is fit. Now, fitness itself can be at various levels. So what the teacher would do is find at what level the student is. And then if the teacher decides to accept that student as his disciple, then the teacher will give the student a teaching appropriate for that level and make the student practice it. As a result of practicing that teaching, the student gets some experience and is ready for the next lesson. Then first the theory, practice, experience, next lesson. Theory, practice, experience, next lesson. So as you can see, in an ideal situation, the theoretical understanding of a subject and living according to it, practicing goes side by side. And that's how it should be in an ideal situation. The difficulty that many of us experience today is an easy availability of texts, which is good in many ways. So the good side is the texts are more easily accessible. Long back, even before paper and printing came, it wasn't easy to find these manuscripts. Many of them were handwritten, they were fewer in number, and you had to kind of go long distances to know this. Now, if you have access to internet, it's there right by you. So that's good. The disadvantage in that is that while texts and information is easily accessible, we may not always be sure whether we are fit to get that information, but are we fit to absorb it correctly? Are we ready to understand it? If we don't understand it, not so much of a problem. But if we misunderstand it, then that's a major problem. So that's the downside of it, that we know a lot, theoretically we know a lot, but somehow that just remains at the cerebral level. It doesn't change our character. It doesn't change the way we think, doesn't change the way we relate with other people, doesn't change our attitude to life. And so that's the challenge of how to transform theory into practice. Because spiritual life is not just about knowing things. It's not just about reading books. It's about whatever we read and whatever, we don't have to accept anything blindly. But if anything resonates with our head and heart, if anything makes sense, then we have to see how this knowledge, which makes sense to me, can make me a better human being, can make me see things more clearly. And that's the basic approach that the Upanishads take towards knowledge. So now, having determined that Nachiketa is a fit student, Yama begins his teaching. So the second chapter is really where the teaching begins, per se, after ascertaining the fitness. So let's look at the first verse. Anyachreyo anyadutaiva preyah te ubhe nanarthe purusham sinitah tayo shreyaf adadanasya sadhur bhavati hiyaterthatyau preyo vrunite. One thing is the good, and quite different indeed is the pleasant. Having been of different requisitions, they both bind the Purusha. Good befalls him who follows the good, but loses he the goal who chooses the pleasant. So what this verse is pointing out, that essentially, and this is true for all of us in life, that two things present themselves before us. In Sanskrit, the words that are used are Shreya and Preya. Now, Shreya is translated here in this translation as the good, and Preya as the pleasant. Broadly speaking, at different junctures in our life, we are called upon to make choices. Choices about small things and big things. It's as simple a choice as, what shall I have for breakfast tomorrow? Shall I go to McDonald's and have something, or shall I just have something more healthy? Usually, not often, healthy foods don't tend to be tasty. At least that's the stereotypical view, that the attraction for junk food is it's tasty, may not be so healthy. Someone said, nothing makes me so sick as health foods. It doesn't have to be that way, really. If it is cooked well, and even healthy foods can be tasty. But that's the popular view, that things which are really tasty, things which we long to have, may not always have the nourishment that it has, while things which are really nourishing may not be so attractive. That's the general principle. So Shreya is things which are really good for me. Even if sometimes on the face of them, it doesn't look like such an attractive option. And Preya, the pleasant, is an attractive option. But if I look deeply in it, it may not be so good. So that's what this verse points out. One thing is the good, and quite different indeed is the pleasant, having been of different requisitions. Different requisition means they have different goals. In Sanskrit, in the Vedas, they say that there are, broadly speaking, two goals. They call it, in Sanskrit, Abhyudaya and Nishreyasa. Abhyudaya means a prosperity. Anything that makes us more prosperous in this world. It could be in terms of wealth, it could be in terms of fame, name, recognition. So everything that makes our stay in this world more attractive. And that's called Abhyudaya. And Nishreyasa means something that will bring me good not only in this world, but on a much larger understanding of life. Something that will bring me good forever. Because right now, when we think about life, usually we have a very blinkered view. Life is generally thought in terms of until I am alive. Even we don't think it this way, because even to think of until I am alive is a recognition that I might die someday. So most of us don't even think in those terms. But essentially, what every one of us seeks when we say, oh, I want to be happy, I don't want suffering, we are usually thinking about happiness, contentment in the kind of life we are leading now. We are thinking about absence of pain and suffering here. Not too many of us are thinking about what will happen after I die. Whatever I'm doing now, whatever I'm aspiring for now, would it take care of my happiness only now, or would it take care of my happiness after my death? Or the death is such unpleasant a subject, I don't even want to think about it. So Abhyudaya is all about this world that I'm experiencing right now. Nishreyasa is stepping back. It's not ignoring this world, but it's stepping back and saying, let me think about life or existence on a much larger scale. Not simply that which is sandwiched between my birth and death, but that which was even before my birth and after my death. So what am I doing, or am I doing anything at all to assure my well-being even after my death, not simply in the immediate present? So that is what is saying. They have different requisitions, and they both bind the Purusha. Now, how would they bind? Now, we know that among the things which doesn't make us feel fully free is that all of us are always seeking something. And until we have got what we are seeking, we don't feel fully at rest. So pretty much anyone you ask, what's your goal? What are you looking forward to? And every one of us will have something to say about what we are looking forward to or what we want to do. And because there are these unfinished dreams, unfinished goals, unfinished tasks, as long as they are unfinished, I cannot be completely at rest. The problem is, even when there are certain unfinished tasks, and you finish them, and you think, oh, now I can be at rest. As soon as you finish something, there's something else that stands. So it seems to be unending. It is not as if we just have one dream, or one goal, or one target. We have kind of series of them. So even if we finish one, we always find something else is unfinished. And that is what holds us down. That is what keeps us down. We can't be, however much We would want to feel like completely at rest and just, people say, oh, I'm enjoying life. Yes, of course they are enjoying. But it's an enjoyment which somehow succeeds temporarily to kind of keep down or keep under the surface the anxieties and stress that we have. But we can't keep them suppressed for a long time. So we just have, let's say you go to a party and you're with your friends and you're having a great time. You say, we had such fun. And then you come home and you're back in your room. And then all those anxieties and stress that were there, they again come on the surface. And then it's difficult. And then what? Then we find always some way to again kind of push them, and they don't want to think about it. And so life oftentimes then becomes simply a way to not just conquer our stress and anxiety, which most people don't seem to do. It's just like, let me try to cover my anxiety, cover my stress, and keep my mind busy with something else so that I don't have to think about it. And that is what is meant by saying these bind the Purusha. Now, we can understand the stress and anxiety binding a person here about things and goals we want to achieve in life. But what about people who are seeking God or who are seeking a spiritual enlightenment? How and why will spiritual enlightenment bind a person? Well, simple reason is this. If I'm seeking spiritual freedom, I'm acknowledging that presently I don't have it. Because if I already have freedom, there's no need to seek it. So my present feeling of being unfulfilled, my present feeling of being not free, itself is a bondage. Because as we will see, and as the Upanishadic teaching that you have seen on other contexts, that in reality I'm a free person. But now that I feel I'm not free, so my seeking after freedom is itself a bondage, because really I'm already free. Now, what it means is this. That doesn't mean I have to stop seeking it. It only means seeking spiritual enlightenment is the only way to become free and then realize that we were never bound to begin with. It's a little bit like if you have, let's say if you have lost, oftentimes people lose their remote, say TV remote. Sometimes they are so tiny and you're not able to find where it is. You know that it hasn't left your home. It is somewhere in your room. But you can't say, oh, I know it's there, so I don't have to search for it, because you still don't have it. So even though you know it's there, because you don't have access to it, you still have to search for it. And let's say you search for it all through your room, everywhere in your room, and then suddenly find, oh, it's in the pocket of the jacket that I'm wearing. It's already in your pocket. It was with you all along, but you didn't know it. But you had to search for it in order to find that you never really had lost it. It was already with you. But that search was necessary. Similarly, our search for spiritual freedom is necessary in order for us to know that we were never bound to begin with. But whether it's the search for spiritual freedom or search for worldly prosperity, both these searches bind human beings, that they don't allow us to rest until we have gotten whatever it is that we are seeking. And then, of course, go down and say, good befalls him who follows the good, but loses he the goal who chooses the pleasant. It makes sense also. If all that I'm seeking for is a solution to the problems of this world, then when I leave this world, those solutions are useless. So I need to find a solution that will be useful to me even after I leave this world. It's like Think about it this way. Nowadays, of course, most of the media that we want to access is generally can be accessed on all kind of devices. But there was a time not too long ago when certain things, if certain things you could access them only via Mac or only via Windows. And then, well, that's a restriction. So if I have, say, something which can be played only on a Mac, and there is going to be a time when I'm not going to have access to a Mac, then I'm not going to be able to use this. So if I want an ideal solution, would be to have something which will have access, which will give me access to it no matter where I am, or even if I lose access to the present gadget that I have. So that's the general idea. So if the solution that I seek are applicable only to this world, only as I'm in my present situation as a human being, then those solutions will work only up to my death. And I'll be just helpless afterwards because I have not thought about those problems. That is why it says, good befalls him who follows the good, but loses he the goal, because life is larger, bigger than just this period until we die. In fact, this itself is in some ways a affirmation in a very indirect way to the question of Nachiketa, does anything survive death? Because if nothing survives death, we don't have to even worry about afterlife. But by saying that the path of the good, which thinks about these larger matters, such a person, good befalls such a person, while the other person loses the goal. That's the idea. Let's look at the second verse. Shreyascha preyascha manushyametaha tau samparitya vivinakti dhiraha shreyo hi dhiro abhipreyaso vrunite preyo mando yogakshemat vrunite. Both the good and the pleasant approach man. The wise one discriminates between the two, having examined them well. The wise person prefers the good to the pleasant, but the fool chooses the pleasant through avarice and attachment. So this idea continues in the second verse, that both these present themselves before us. A wise person discriminates between the two. The Sanskrit is very beautiful. Tau samparitya vivinakti dhiraha. It's a little bit like samparitya means actually going around and examining it. It's like when you go to buy a product, buy something, and especially if it's expensive, you want to kind of examine it, that it's perfect in every way. So similarly, when these options come to us in life, if we choose any option just impulsively, just because, oh, this sounds like a good idea, go for it. But a person who is more careful says, now, let me not be so much in a hurry. If there are options, let me weigh the pros and cons of every option carefully. Let me kind of almost go around that and examine it from all angles. That is what it means by saying, sampariktya vivinakti. Vivinakti means looks deeply and carefully. Who is the person who does it? The word used here is dhira, and translated here as a wise person. Dhira often gets translated in classical Sanskrit as a brave person, as a courageous person. And that's true. I mean, sometimes courage and wisdom are both necessary, but the word dhi comes from the same root, the word buddhi, or the intellect comes in. Sometimes the word dhi, or sometimes the word medha as well in Sanskrit, is used also in a special sense. And that is, although all of us have buddhi, all of us have an intellect, we know that not everyone's intellect has an equally good absorbing capacity, for instance. Because we know when we go to school, if there are exams, everyone answers. Not everyone gets the same grade. So everyone has an intellect. Why don't everyone get the same grade? Because the one way you could express it is, well, we may have the intellect may not have opened up fully, or may not have manifested its powers fully, or may not have acquired there may be different levels of clarity, if you like. So that intellect in which the clarity has reached its maximum level, that sometimes gets referred to as dhi or medha. So when, for instance, when we read these texts like these, or really for that matter any book, but especially these texts, even though we may understand the language, even if we don't understand the Sanskrit, even if we understand the translation, we can read and understand the English here, but how much we can read between the lines of what exactly is being said, that absorption of that knowledge will depend on the amount of clarity we have acquired. So the greater the clarity, the deeper the meaning that we will be able to access. And so the word dhi is often used for that wise part of our intellect. Why I say is wise part is, why is it that sometimes when we have to make choices, people struggle? People feel like, oh, this also feels like good. I'm not able to make up my mind. This feels good and I'm not. So why do these dilemmas occur? The dilemma occurs because just like there are multiple choices outside, my mind and my intellect is also not one monolithic whole. That there are kind of sections, if you like. So even in our intellect, there is this refined part of the intellect which can see things more deeply. And then there is the other somewhat unrefined part of the intellect. And so what happens is, when we have, let's say, to make a choice between two, we say a part of me, but it's really part of the intellect says, this is the right thing, choose this. The other part says, choose this. And since both are parts of my own intellect, I'm not able to decide. And which part of the intellect we choose to follow would determine whether we make the right choice or not. In the Gita, the same thing is described using the word, they use the word Atma really, but it's really referring to the mind and the intellect there. And what the Gita says is, the mind can be my friend, the mind can be my enemy. And that's what is really being referred to here. It's not just that the whole of mind never becomes a friend immediately. The whole of mind is not our enemy either. So there is this friendly part of the mind. Now, why is it called an enemy? What does it mean that a mind is an enemy? Enemy is a little bit of a strong word in some sense. But it's like this. If I have these two things to choose from, and I take someone's help and say, hey, can you help me decide what would be a good thing for me to do? Now, if that person is my friend, that person is really going to choose what's good for me, what will be helpful to me. Even if it is something that doesn't look attractive to me, my friend is going to say, you know what, you think that's not good, but I know it's good for you. On the other hand, if I ask someone who is my enemy, usually we won't ask an enemy. But let's say I ask someone who I think is my friend, but is really my enemy. So if that person is an enemy, that person is going to choose the bad option for me because that person doesn't want me to do good. That's the idea. So when we have a dilemma and a part of me says choose this and a part of me choose that time we don't know which part is my friend and which part is my enemy. That's the problem. And spiritual life in the beginning doesn't have too much to do with God in the beginning, really. In the beginning, spiritual life is primarily dealing with our own mind. And what will help me in that struggle is to first identify this friendly part of my mind and expand it. So I'm friend and enemy, I think that analogy, I'm pushing it too far. Essentially, the clear part of my mind and the not so clear part of my mind. I need to make more of my mind clear. It's a little bit like when you're driving and the windshield is foggy. Well, you won't be able to drive. At the very least, the first thing you want is the immediate part in front of the wheel. When you are sitting at the driving, you want at least the front portion to be clear, even if the rest of it is not so clear. And then gradually you want the whole thing to become clear so that you have a full view of the path in front of you. So that's essentially what it is. So the windshield of our life, our mind is really the windshield, and we are driving this vehicle of the body and going through this path of life. A little bit of that windshield is clear. So I'm trying to see the path ahead through that clear portion. A lot of it is still foggy. Now, if I want to not make any mistakes in my life, I need to make that complete windshield very, very clear. That's the idea. And when it becomes clear, then I'll become truly a dhira, one whose dhi, that clear part of the mind, now is established. So that is in that sense, the translation says the wise man or wise person. The Sanskrit is dhira. So it says the wise person prefers the good to the pleasant, even if the good at times may not look as attractive an option as the pleasant. Well, by definition, pleasant would appear pleasant, but the good may not always appear to be. When I was young, there's one thing I never developed a taste for was bitter gourd, this Karela, they say. And well, it was not pleasant at all. And so bitter, and some people like it, of course, so, but somehow I could never develop a taste for it. And I remember my mother at home, they say, you should take it. If you take it, it purifies your blood, and it's so good for your health and all the health benefits. Now, that is what I meant. So, on the face of it, it's really good, not very pleasant. I'm sorry to say I haven't developed a taste for Karela even now. But that's essentially the idea. That's everything that is pleasant may not be good. Everything that is good may not be pleasant. If we have to choose between only that which is only pleasant and only good, choose the good. But if you get that which is pleasant and good, of course, choose that one. That's the idea here. But the fool chooses the pleasant through avarice and attachment. The word for avarice and attachment here is yoga kshema. Yoga means preserving what we have. And kshema means, yoga means, in the Gita definition of yoga means to get, to collect whatever you want. And kshema means preserving what you have. And that's pretty much a natural human instinct, that whatever I have, whatever I value, I don't want to lose it. I want to preserve it. And whatever it is that I value but I don't have, I want to get it. So avarice, the word here, the way it's translated, really means something that I value but I don't have and I'm trying to get it. And kshema means, attachment means that which I value and I have and I want to hold on to it. So this basic human instinct to preserve what we have and to try to acquire what we don't have makes this what is referred to as the fool. The word here is manda. Manda, again, it's often translated as a dim-witted person or a stupid person would just look at the immediate benefit through avarice and attachment and not look at the long-term benefits. That's why we need to make intelligent choices in life. Okay, let's look at verse 3. Sattvam priyan priyarupamscha kaman abhidhyayan nachiketo atyasrakshihi naitam srinkam vittamayim avapto yasyam majjanti bahavo manushyaha. So thou, O Nachiketa, have renounced all these pleasurable objects of love and those that pleasant in appearance, having pondered over them well. Thou hast not gone into this path of wealth in which many men perish. So here now he praises Nachiketa. We remember from the first chapter, he had offered all these pleasant options, pleasant and pleasurable options to Nachiketa. Nachiketa did exactly what was described in these verses. He didn't simply look at them at face value. Because any of us, even if 1% of what Yama offered to Nachiketa was offered to most people, they will jump at it. They will say, I don't want anything else, that's it. But Nachiketa, all of this was offered. He took his time. He looked at the whole thing from all different angles, weighed the pros and cons, and determined, now, this might seem like a good option, but in the long run, this is not only a bad option, it is actually detrimental to my progress. And he rejects it. That's why Yama is praising him here, that even though when I offered it, you pondered over them, you thought about it, and you have not gone into this path of wealth in which many people. So most other people would have gladly accepted Yama's offer and perished. And this is something that we can think about. The choices that we have made in our lives so far, which of those choices have been wise and we feel good about it? Which of those choices have not been good and we might not feel good about it? But again, not feeling good about it should not make us just sit and say, oh, I've been stupid, I am this. That doesn't help either. So if we just need to be practical, we need to look at the choices we have made, happy about the right choices we have done, learn from the bad choices we make. And if I learn from them, how do I know I've learned from them? The only way I know I've learned from my bad choices in life is going forward, I will not make those same mistakes again. Going forward, I become a little bit wiser by all that I've experienced in life. Oftentimes we become more wise by the blows that life gives us, by the struggles we have had in life. So the more we learn from our mistakes, the clearer the mind becomes, the wiser the mind becomes. And with that wiser mind, the choices I make will tend to be more right and less wrong. That's how we have to do. So we shouldn't be so demoralize ourselves by just regretting the mistakes of our life. Everyone makes mistakes, everyone makes bad choices. But we also can't say that all of my choices have been bad. If all of our choices were bad, you would never be sitting here wanting to study the Kathopanishad. So that's never happened. So all of us have made certain wise decisions. Some of the decisions may not be so good. So learn from both. Learn from both the wise decisions and the stupid decisions, so that you are prepared for the decisions you have to make going forward in life. And oftentimes, more major decisions will have to be taken in life later than we have had to do now. So we must be prepared, not choose anything hastily, not choose anything impulsively, but take your time, study everything through every angle, weigh the pros and cons, and then the chances of making a bad decision are less. That's the message that comes to us from these first 3 verses of the 2nd chapter. So now, if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, comments, feel free to ask. Yeah.
Swamiji, regarding the first verse, I was thinking that often it's clear that what is good, what is what is pleasant. That discrimination is clear, yet the pull of the pleasant is still there. And it puzzles me that we understand that, this is pleasant and we can follow that path. It is going to lead to suffering. That is also very clear. And yet the mind still goes there.
Yeah. That's why it's foggy. The window is foggy. The windshield is foggy. I mean, think about it this way. When you're driving, and of course now winter is coming, so the more chances of it getting foggy. The best thing is pull over and stop. Don't drive if the windshield is fogged, because something not good is going to happen. But a lot of people don't stop. Or sometimes maybe you are in that part of the highway, it's not possible to stop either. So that's why sometimes something is not right, either the external circumstances or one's own foolhardiness. We still just go and just do. In fact, I would go to the extent of saying that especially as adults, we may make some very innocent mistakes when we are relatively young. But as adults, the mistakes that we make are often conscious mistakes. By conscious mistakes, I mean something that I know is not good for me, I just go and do it anyway because of that inner dilemma. A part of my mind which is not so friendly is telling me, oh yes, do it. But the other part, the clearer part of my mind, maybe in a little softer voice is saying, no, 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 don't do it. And we listen to this louder clamor of this other part. There is a story about, it says one person was in India in the summer, it's very hot, and then the noon sun is right above in 12 noon, so this person is going, and by the heat, extreme heat, the person falls unconscious. And as it so often happens, people just crowd and everybody shouting, get water, and bring, everybody has their own solution to revive this person who's fallen unconscious. And then someone is saying, call the doctor, bring ambulance, and this big commotion. There is this one elderly lady passing by. She sees this, and in a very soft voice, she's telling, just give him a little brandy, he'll be okay, just little brandy. But she's speaking in such a soft voice, and everybody is yelling, saying, call the doctor, and so on. No one's listening to her. Then this person who has fallen unconscious, he gets up and says, can't you hear what that lady is saying? This was when we were children. This was used to make us laugh loudly. But that's essentially the problem, that sometimes the best solution may be voiced inside our head with a very soft voice. And all these wrong choices may be just loud. So that's why we need to take time and not do things impulsively.
So Swamiji, is it that even if we have discrimination, dispassion does not arise? Or is it that the discrimination is not very clear yet?
No, sometimes, actually that's why you need both. That's why they are pretty chronological. That first we need to have that discernment, to recognize what is good and what is bad. But that's not enough, because then I need the second, detachment. So viveka, then you need vairagya. I need enough detachment to say, this is good and this is bad, I want the good. Even if that which is bad is very attractive. So but that doesn't happen unless I have enough dispassion and detachment. So we need both. That's why I said a lot of the wrong choices we make in life are not because I did not know that it was a wrong choice. I knew it was a wrong choice. But at that moment, this other part of my mind, the not friendly part of my mind, somehow justified it, somehow made me feel, it's okay. And I do it. And then afterwards, after I suffer pain, and then the other part of my, then I feel like, oh no, I shouldn't have done that. I knew it was wrong, and I did it. So that's how we make wrong choices in life. So yes, we need both.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Swamiji, in the path of devotion, there's a sense of surrendering to a power greater than oneself and allowing that power to guide and kind of go with the flow with that.
Yeah.
When you talk, as I'm hearing you speak, there's a sense of coming out of that and kind of using the rational mind to analyze and look and so. How does one? I'm trying to reconcile this heart-centered path of devotion with what you're saying about, really discriminating. So, what is the balance between head and heart in this?
Well, I don't think it's so much a matter of balance. It's just that it's more the temperament of a person, I think. Some people would want to just depend on their mind, and some people who are more theistically oriented might want to look at that higher power. At an advanced stage, we will realize that that which we call the clearer part of my mind, that which I see is the friendliest of all, is not really different from that higher power. But in the beginning, in the theistic stage, we are not really locating that higher power inside. We're just locating it, somewhere. And so in the beginning, the two things might look very different, but ultimately we'll find that they are not that different. There's one note of caution here, and that is we need at least enough clarity to not mistake that higher power to my lower mind. Because sometimes, lot of as they say, there is a saying, the path to hell is paved with good intentions. So sometimes, if we are not careful, if we don't have enough self-knowledge, and I'm not speaking about like just a regular self-knowledge, about, at the lower level, the danger is about self-deception. And sometimes this can be very unconscious. By self-deception, I mean, because there are people who hear voices, people who say, God told me to do this. In fact, some of these people who have been doing all these terrorist acts and so on, and many of them have at least said, and they appear very sincere, this was what God wanted me to do. And it's possible that somebody might delude themselves into thinking this was exactly, they are carrying out the divine will by whatever it is they're doing. And the rest of us might say, wait a minute, why would God want you to go and create destruction and death? But many of these people, they may be manipulated by their bosses and others. But many of these people are pretty sincere people whose minds are being more manipulated by other people. So that's the little bit of a danger, that when I surrender myself to the higher power is a higher power. In other words, to put it in a different way, that my surrender is not only totally sincere, but has enough discernment to know that I'm not deluding myself. Because a lot of times, even the human mind is such that even terrible things, people are capable of finding a justification for it somehow. And sometimes people involve God into it. Or what can I do? There have been incidents when people say, "Oh, nothing personal, but that's what God wanted me to do." Things like that. Yeah. So I think. So does it make sense what I said? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anything else?
Swamiji, just a thought. This good and pleasant reminds me of, I think, the marshmallow experiment, where, right, there was...
Yeah, please, go ahead, mention it.
I don't remember the full experiment, but I believe it was about instant gratification. There was a room of kids, and they were given a choice of having that one marshmallow immediately, or then waiting for some time, and then you'll get 3 or whatever more.
Yeah.
And then the kids that ate the marshmallow immediately, further on they tracked that set of kids, and those who showed forbearance were more successful in life, or something like that.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like I was reminded of the good. And
absolutely, I'm very happy you mentioned that, because that is a very good example. You can just go to YouTube, maybe you can see that marshmallow test. How you can see, and these little kids didn't know that a camera was. How many of you have seen that? Have you seen that? Yeah, it's very cute actually. So these kids don't know that there are cameras there, and here is this marshmallow, and some other because they have to wait if they want more. But here is one right in front. So it's like, should I get it? And then you can just grab it and start. Very good example. Yes, that's exactly what happens in life. That sometimes we may have to wait longer for something which is more precious, but we may not have that patience to wait, and we might choose a lesser option. And that's the struggle that is going on in this kid's mind while deciding whether I should wait for the extra one which is going to come after 5 minutes, or just go for this. That's essentially in a different context that happens in the lives of all of us. Very good. I like that. Yeah. Okay, so we will stop here today. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. For the Sunday satsang, our subject will be going beyond words. But I will use words to speak on this subject, but I'll try to use as few words as possible. So that will be a subject on Sunday. On Saturday, we will have our Saturday and Tuesday. We'll have our Arati and meditation as usual. Next Wednesday, because there'll be Thanksgiving after that, and I want you to prepare well for your Thanksgiving. So next Wednesday, we will not have the Kathopanishad class, so we'll meet 15 days from now. So at Thanksgiving, you have a lot of things to choose from the pleasant and the good, or what will you have that day. So choose well for your Thanksgiving dinner, including what kind of guests you want around the table. There also can be pleasant and the good. So that's our program for the upcoming week. Let's conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Daoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.